Welcome to the Lean Blog Podcast. Visit our website at www.leanblog.org. Now, here's your host, Mark Graban.
Hi, this is Mark Graban. This is episode number 59 of the podcast for January 26, 2009. Our guest today is Bob Miller, the Executive Director of the Shingo Prize for Operational Excellence, which is housed out of Utah State University. Bob is going to be talking about some recent changes to the prize, how it's administered and its criteria, and he's also going to talk about some future directions for the Shingo Prize. You can visit www.leanpodcast.org if you want to leave comments or listen to previous podcast episodes. As always, thanks for listening. Well, again, our guest today on the podcast is Bob Miller, the Executive Director of the Shingo Prize. Bob, I want to thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be part of your podcast today.
So I was wondering if you could start by introducing yourself and maybe telling our listeners a little bit about your background prior to coming onto your role here with the Shingo Prize.
Thank you. I've been with the Shingo Prize for about 2.5 years now and the Executive Director for about 1.5 of those years. Before I joined the Shingo Prize, I had the privilege of working for some really great companies. I started working with John Deere back in the 70s when we first started applying computers to manufacturing and engineering kinds of applications. Then I spent some time in Chicago and then across the lake with Herman Miller. I was the Vice President of Manufacturing Engineering and Quality at Herman Miller during the time when we were just starting to implement total quality management and just-in-time ideas. And then I spent 14 years in Denver, Colorado. 9 of those years was with the Gates Rubber Company, and I was the Chief Quality Officer for them, and then the Chief Information Strategy Officer, Information Technology Strategy Officer, and then was fortunate enough to be a partner in a consulting company in Boulder, Colorado for 6 years before I moved over here.
So it sounds like you've got a real good background in terms of understanding what makes manufacturing companies tick and how lean and other process improvement methodologies are implemented.
Yeah, like many of your listeners here, I was involved in this before it was called lean, and watched each of us kind of struggle through what are the most important ideas out of these various movements that we all experienced. What was the part that we wanted to keep, and what was the part that we wanted to discard? And I'm pleased to see the best of those ideas of JIT and TQM and quality circles and statistical process control, to see them kind of come forward and get folded into the ideas that we now call lean.
Yeah. So talking about the Shingo Prize, I was wondering if you could describe a little bit about the process for how companies apply for the prize or how companies are evaluated. And in that context, what do you think of the biggest benefit? What would the biggest benefit be to a company that is going through the Shingo Prize process?
Okay, yeah, thanks. It's a good question. The Shingo Prize has existed for we're actually in our 21st year. And for 19 years of that, the methodology really remained mostly static. So it was an assessment methodology with the idea behind it that if you could identify the best companies and then shine a light on them so other people can learn from them, we can promote improvement and excellence in manufacturing throughout the United States. We've expanded that strategy in the last year or two, the last couple of years, and we've said what we really did is we looked back and we said, where are the companies that were early Shingo Prize recipients? How many of them have been able to sustain what they started when we acknowledged them with the Shingo Prize? How many of them are better off? How many of them are, not as far along as they were at that time? How many have lost ground? So we did that sort of deep soul searching of ourselves and other companies, and came up with some really important understandings that are now part of the Shingo Prize model. We felt like we needed to create something more than just for assessment, but something that organizations could use to guide their transformation. We also studied more deeply Dr. Shingo's work, and we looked back at what he really taught as some of his core precepts. And we saw the correlation between Dr. Shingo's teaching with Toyota, at Toyota and other companies, and what we observed in early Shingo Prize recipients, and that is that transformation of companies around the ideas of lean occurs at three levels. The first level is sort of at a tools level, and we all understand what the tools of lean are. The second level of transformation really has to do with systems, building the right systems or management processes or management systems to kind of guide the application of the tools and provide consistency and repeatability over time. And the third dimension or the third level of transformation that very few companies have really gotten to is the principles level. In other words, they've really deeply culturally come to understand the ideas behind lean and embedded those ideas into the consciousness of the company or the culture of the company. So what we learned from ourselves as we looked back at the companies that we were recognizing is that our emphasis was largely around companies that were implementing lean tools and doing it well. And the consequence of that is that many of those early companies have not been able to sustain their efforts over the long term. They were programmatic and personality-oriented, etc. So the model and the criteria now to receive recognition from the Shingo Prize is based on three levels of recognition. The first level is what we call a Shingo Bronze Medallion, and that recognizes companies that are organizations that have demonstrated a lot of depth in the application and the wisdom of applying lean tools. The Shingo Silver Medallion is given to organizations who have demonstrated not only tool skills but also good management systems. And the third level, which is the actual Shingo Prize, is reserved for organizations that have deeply understood the philosophical, the principles behind the tools and built and deeply embedded them into their cultures. So it's bigger than a person or bigger than a program or bigger than a corporate initiative. It's the way they think. It's the thinking system of the organization. So that's the idea behind it. We believe that we have substantially raised the bar for what it takes to receive a Shingo Prize now than what it was just a couple of years ago. So the amount of effort required and the time that a company needs to be working at it to get to the level of the Shingo Prize is greater. But we feel like we're doing a better job of recognizing organizations that have really done something that's sustainable over the long term.
Yeah, and that does sound like a really nice evolution, because that's a topic on the forefront of a lot of people's minds. How do we sustain lean? How do we embed it into the culture? So it's good that the prize and the model drive to that. And I'd invite our listeners. I've got the benefit. I'm looking at the Shingo Prize webpage right now with this nice illustration of the Shingo Prize model. Looks somewhat like a Toyota house type diagram. I'd invite people to go take a look at that, and I'll link to that on the blog page for this episode of the podcast. So, Bob, with that evolution and looking more, for system driven and principle driven lean, what is the application process, or how has that evolved? Because it seems like it might be easier to detect or score how people are doing on tools, because you can see a lot of that firsthand. How do you go through either in the application or site visits to really detect if the systems and principles are there and in place?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's probably the most difficult part of our work, because we feel a great obligation, a sense of responsibility to provide good quality feedback to organizations. In fact, when I worked at this furniture company in Michigan, our CEO used to say that the first responsibility of a leader is to define reality. And so one of the most valuable contributions that the Shingo Prize methodology can provide organizations is it provides a great way for organizations to be able to tell the truth to themselves about where they really are. But it requires that you be able to ask deep questions and really know what you're looking at. So we have a pool of about 250 examiners in the Shingo Prize that we work diligently to train and certify and keep qualified as the model evolves. So we teach them how to ask questions and how to observe. All of them are senior, experienced practitioners in Lean in lots of different industries from lots of different levels. So an application, you would go to the Shingo Prize website, shingoprize.org, and there's a link in there that takes you into the application process. So the first step is to create an intent to apply, and that opens a dialogue between our office and the company. And after several phone conversations and discussions and maybe some documents back and forth, we agree with the company that it is appropriate, that they're at a stage where an application would be helpful to them and the feedback would be useful in their improvement journey. So once that's done, then they begin the preparation of what we call an achievement report. An achievement report is a 40, 50, 60-page document that really describes the current state of where the organization is right now, where they have been. It includes their metrics. We provide categories of metrics that we want to be able to see a minimum of 3 years of data on. They submit their achievement report. We review it, essentially score it, and determine whether or not a site visit is warranted. If the site visit is warranted, then we'll assign a team of examiners, anywhere from 3 to 5 examiners, depending on the size of the organization. And they'll go spend 2 complete days in the facility at the Gemba, asking the questions, digging deep, trying to understand the way things are, trying to understand whether people know more than just how to use the tools, but why they use the tools, searching for, the depth of understanding of what they're doing, and trying to determine, what is really the culture of the organization. And when you're experienced, most people will recognize that you can go into an organization and you can tell. I mean, you can tell in a period of even an hour almost what the culture really is. You can tell the way the introductions are made in the conference room in the first hour of the meeting, where the leadership team is and what their attitudes are and how they're structured and what their philosophies are and what's really driving their thinking. So 2 days with senior examiners is an adequate time, we've learned, to get a pretty darn good sense for where companies are and then be able to provide feedback to them. These are things that you're doing really well, and these are the areas where, if you pay attention, it'll move you to the next level.
Sure. And so I imagine, I guess part of the selling point for going through the application process is not just win, a binary function, win the prize, don't win the prize, that anybody who goes through the process is going to get some feedback and maybe more importantly have a framework to kind of take a look both in terms of what's working well, what are opportunities for improvement, to get some feedback from, I assume, from experienced people who are coming there as the examiners, right?
Yeah, for sure. That's really our primary objective. That's what our mission is, to help promote operational excellence into organizations of all kinds through understanding of these principal tools and systems of Lean. And so the feedback is the most valuable component. We actually, when we talk about the Shingo Prize, we try hard not to talk about it in the context of a trophy. We really describe the Shingo Prize is the results that are able to be created for the organization by the application of these principles, systems, and tools. So the prize, the Shingo Prize, are the improvements and the results that you get. And incidentally, there's some recognition that goes along with it so that you can help your peers and others to learn from you.
Mm-hmm.
But the value is the feedback and the results that you're getting by using the approach.
Sure. And maybe one other question here. You've touched a little bit on the evolution of the prize in terms of shifting from tools to systems and management. It seems like the prize is also evolving in the name shifting from the Shingo Prize for Manufacturing Excellence now, the Shingo Prize for Operational Excellence. And so I wondering if you could talk about that evolution and if there's plans for categories outside of traditional factory operations, maybe including healthcare.
Yeah, when you really think about value from the customer's point of view, value to customers is driven by not just the plant floor where we've been focusing for 20 years, but it's really value is created when the enterprise works well as a system. And so one of the evolutions of the Shingo Prize is we would expect organizations who challenge at the plant level the first time, when their Shingo Prize expires 5 years later, we expect them to challenge at a broader level. We expect them to challenge at the enterprise level. So they would include all of the support functions and all of the key processes of the business that are necessary to contribute to customer value. So that's one evolution. We also recognize that when you talk about lean principles, they are universal. You might have a slightly different interpretation of the tools at a tools level, and maybe different systems even at a systems level for different industries, but the principles are universal. And so we have taken off the shackle, if you will, of manufacturing, and we said it's the Shingo Prize for Operational Excellence, and any organization in any industry may challenge for the Shingo Prize. And we may have to scramble to find practitioners who've had experience in that industry, but healthcare is the first one that we're really targeting as an industry where we think we can add a lot of value. So we're doing a lot of work now with healthcare organizations, and we hope that this coming year we'll have our first applications from healthcare companies for Shingo Prize at some level of recognition.
Yeah.
And the only other thing, Mark, I'd say, and for your listeners, is that many companies that we've been associated with in the 20 years that we've been around are multinational companies, and so we've also said, if we want them to use the Shingo model as a transformation model for the company, we have to allow them to use the process, the whole Shingo process, anywhere in the world. So we've also begun the creation of partnerships with not-for-profit organizations in other parts of the world, so the Shingo applications can come from, and we now have in place a strong relationship in the UK and Ireland. This coming year, we'll be finalizing arrangements in Australia and India, and are beginning to do due diligence with a couple of really, really sharp companies, organizations, and universities in China.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. And there's a lot of good stuff going on in healthcare, and there are some organizations, some hospitals who have those 3 years of results at this point. So that'll be really interesting to see how that evolves. And
yeah, we're very excited about it. It really is. It's heart work, because the impact of that kind of work is more than just products. It's about people and lives, and the ability to contribute to this goal of saving lives through an improved healthcare system, not to mention costs, is something that creates a lot of energy in a lot of people.
Yeah, that's certainly true. Well, thank you for sharing, some of the latest of what's going on with the Shingo Prize. If people listening are interested in learning more about the Shingo Prize and getting involved in that process or contacting you, can you remind listeners how they might be able to do that?
Yeah, thank you. We actually have just launched a new website, and it reflects all of our new thinking, all the new strategies and the things that we've put in place in the past year. So I would invite all of you to go to www.shingoprize.org, and you'll be able to move around inside there, and you'll be able to get a pretty clear picture of what we're doing, the things that are happening, the companies that are being recognized, and upcoming educational opportunities and conferences, etc. So we encourage all of you to come and become part of the Shingo Prize family. We hope that our website will be a place where people will want to come, where they can meet other people who are doing similar work. They can learn from each other and help to create this strong community of practice around the principles of operational excellence.
Well, that sounds really good. So I look forward to seeing how that evolves over time too. So again, Bob Miller, Executive Director of the Shingo Prize. Thanks so much for taking time out and talking with us today.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening. This has been the Lean Blog Podcast. For Lean news and commentary updated daily, visit www.leanblog.org. If you have any questions or comments about this podcast, email Mark at leanpodcast@gmail.com.